Hello again, friends of this podcast. This is again Nicole Russin-McFarland talking to you about Hollywood personal branding. What do others think of you? This is my very first personal branding lesson and the third of any episode I have recorded for the House of Film podcast. It's a topic that's very dear to me because I personally encounter so much of this. I'm not going to give you cheeseball personal branding lessons. These are things that are true to my heart and I think would be reflective of who I am as a person and passing on advice that I hope appeals to people centuries from now because I think you can always adapt it. Here we go. The very beginning. You can absolutely change what others think of you. In order to do that, though, you must know what people think, including total strangers. And that's the part that really hurts. You don't want to do it, right? I hate doing it too. What you do is you look for yourself on search engines and social media. The results will either make you want to cry, laugh, or both. And by cry, I mean actual tears. And if that is what happens to you, you need to take down those articles. And don't believe what people say about words never hurting you. Words hurt because people get inspired to do bad things with words. Whether it's bullying you or doing something to physically harm you, people do get inspired. So don't believe that sticks and stones break your... What's the phrase? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Oh boy, words hurt. And they hurt more than sticks. When sticks and stones get used metaphorically or literally. All right. You need to work on that. But there's more to this. You need to talk to others outside of your social circles because nobody who likes you is going to tell you the truth. And if he or she does, it will be a biased view of you. Never ask strangers what they think of you because they will like you. It's weird. It's like they're going to give you weird answers. I have never gone up to a stranger and said, "What do you think of me?" If I did, they would be like, "Well, you seem nice," or something weird, and some tourist person. No, don't do that. They'll think you're weird or scary, that you're going to rob them. Don't do that. Particularly in Manhattan or Hollywood or London, the cities where you probably live, because tourists get afraid of everything. No, a good idea is to talk to journalists and bloggers interviewing you because they blurt out things without filters and base interview questions around the image of you in their minds. And if you think you can't get press, I'm going to start an episode in the future, hopefully near future, about getting press because anybody can get press. You don't need a publicist to do it. The publicist can help, but that doesn't guarantee you will get press. And very often publicists' ideas of what press can be might differ from your ideas. So that's an episode in itself. Okay, but back to this. Think about patterns and the nice and mean things people have said about you all of your life and what they say about you now to your face. Also, what you have heard about yourself behind your back. And maybe the same things, and maybe different things, and maybe things that are kind of the same but evolved to be more polite versions of that. And since this is a very personal lesson, I will share with you what people think of me, did think of me, and haters think of me sometimes. When I was younger, for whatever reason, I could be in a sweater up to my neck and pants down on the floor with socks and boots and whatever. People think that I'm inappropriate. And by people, I mean like the standard person who's a university professor. And I'm talking people at my university. I've had great professors, but I've also had a professor accuse me of plagiarism. And not only of a single assignment, which is the worst part, he accused me of having people help me of an entire semester's work of opinion pieces that I had to take for I didn't get a master's. I took an upper division journalism master's thing, and I got permission. That should have told him I'm not plagiarizing, right? I got permission from a teacher within the journalism department to take a master's class because it would fulfill everything and it didn't have a lab and whatever. That should have told him that a teacher believed in me enough. But no, he said I plagiarized. And whether it was me talking about the mass media or me talking about my love of Carmen or classical music, once it hit the classical music thing, he said, stop having other people write your work. and help you on your work. He put it in writing, made the mistake. And I just so happened to have a professor who was also an attorney. And we got together and said, okay, this is a lawsuit ready to happen if you think this young lady plagiarizes. And he had me write a letter kind of under his guidance stating whatever I was thinking and he was thinking and saying that you said she plagiarized and he put it in writing. He backtracked, my teacher, the mean teacher. And then he also thought he's going to pull one under the rug. He's going to give me a thing about science and have me write about Darwinism and science and facts and things. That was my final assignment. I had to read a science book. But here's the deal. My teacher didn't expect when you were good at music, you were also good at science and math. And in fact, you were more likely to be a nerd if you were good at music than if you were good at other forms of creativity. And I pulled one under the rug from him. It's a great story. Unfortunately, at the time, it was not a fun story. I like telling it now. And my teacher no longer works there at the university. So that's one story. But that's kind of the general idea of what people think of me. She's inappropriate. I can be wearing a sweater, an entire sweater that has no arms or legs or anything. I'm in a ball of yarn and they're like, she's so inappropriate. She's promiscuous. She's this. She's after every man and woman she ever meets, particularly the men. Oh, did she shake hands with that guy? Did she give him a paper with a phone number that's actually a voicemail? Shut up. She probably likes him. And that's the thing that I've dealt with all my life. When it's not me dealing with people thinking I'm stupid, I'm not an intellectual, I'm not one of them, whatever it may be. Now, film people are awesome. Hollywood people, but not the people at, standard workplaces, my university, not everybody there, things like that. Some of my classmates, maybe you relate to that. So one of the things, back to this, one of the things that I heard about behind my back about me was, of course, when you put this in a setting of me, I guess, being, a Midwestern girl in a setting that is not the Midwest, and I'm surrounded by these very outgoing chicks who are not dressed like me. I'm wearing the Western type clothes, and then these girls are wearing, spaghetti straps and Texas outfits in the school classroom, and then they're like, some mean girls in my journalism classes were like, she's weird. She's this, she's that. The same thing. When and one of my crimes was that I was wearing a cardigan. That's according to what I was told. And a headband, I think, one time. Hello, headbands. Didn't know that made you weird. And and then there was another time, a guy, to me, this is weird. He told me he had a roommate. And then I found out the roommate happened. This was not in Texas, though. This is a guy who lives in Manhattan. And a guy who had a roommate. And then one day he told me his girlfriend left him. And he was talking to me about some stuff going on in his life. When previously, when he wanted to date me, the girlfriend was a roommate. Then I said, so you live with your girlfriend? Yeah. So your girlfriend was your roommate. Well, yeah, your girlfriend was your roommate. Okay. Instead of just being upfront and saying, it would have been sleazy to say, hey, I want to go out. I have a girlfriend, but I'm going to try to break up with her. That would have been much more appreciated, but no. And then after that, I heard him saying some stuff like she's beautiful and weird, which weird. I'm sorry. I didn't respond very well to your girlfriend as your roommate situation. And that's happened to me more than once, by the way. So if you think you're a guy listening to this and you say, oh, that's when she was younger and then I met her in Manhattan and no, that's a very common thing people do. They say, watch out, ladies. If you have a gentleman and you live with him and you are not married, or you're married to, you live with your girlfriend or whatever, be careful that person is not saying you are his or her roommate. Okay, that's so common in the New York area, at least when I have dealt with people. So there's that. And so what I have done, and this is where it brings me to the second big gulp of my lesson for this edition of this episode, I should say. The web is the first place that people go for learning about you to change what people see. An IMDb or any acting profile page is not enough. But here's what I'm going to tell you about that. So what you do, and hopefully I'm not skipping ahead too far in my notes for this lesson. Okay, so you take that thing, like the people say she's weird. She likes animation. She's weird. She's weird. She's so weird. And she's beautiful. Okay, now let me hit it. Let's bring up my IMDb profile. And we're going to read my official biography, not the whole thing, but I think Ryan alluded to it in the beginning of this. But see here, just in case people think I'm weird, because it's funny, I do so much that men do. It's not weird to men. If women do it, and I don't really view myself as being like an ultra girl power person, but I just know, hey, it's me. I'm female, and if I do anything men do, and I've compared myself to some guys who are outspoken about things or say things or do things, it's cool on them, and on me it's weird. But hey, I own that word now, so it says here, IMDb, this is the actual quote, a quirky, sweet, former New York agency model harnessing the power of the internet into a personal brand as a credible film director and film score composer reads like a Wes Anderson movie plot. And then it goes on to talk about how he used the internet and it was impossible to do before this time period. And, I had online views of my films and, streams and stuff like that. So that's the way to own the word. And I would compare it to people in the LGBTQ community where many mean words that were said about people are now owned by them. And although the mean words are still being said by some people, more people say the words lovingly and they own them like, hey, I'm a this or I'm a that or you're this, and it's kind of in a way of humor poking fun at themselves like, so you think you can say it? Oh, no, I'm saying it. So that's one thing you can do. If people say you're weird, be like, okay, you think I'm weird? Okay, guy with the roommate who's his girlfriend who's now single and has no roommate. Okay, you might think I'm weird and you think I like animation and I'm weird for whatever reasons beyond that. Fine. I'm going to be weird all the way to the bank and be weird like Tim Burton and be weird like Guillermo del Toro and weird like, David Lynch or, like maybe people someone has actually heard of, unlike you, guy who no longer has a roommate / girlfriend. Oh, bye. Okay. That's kind of the vibe that I want you to have because it's very important that you own the words. If you don't take back those words, they will forever be used against you and you need to take them back. So what you do on social media, be active with a website and on social media with words and visuals. Add as many photos of your life and hobbies as one can. Mix in some photos of yourself. People find all of this. It's better having social media accounts and a website defining your personal brand and have some people dislike your personal brand than for most people to have nothing to go by and all get the wrong impression. And I've had that happen. It's terrible. I talk about that a lot, so much. And you may have seen me talking about that on social media, or my website, or wherever I go, news articles, whatever, but I'm open about that. Have a frequently asked questions section on your website until you are so famous everyone knows the answers to these questions. So you're going to need to be pretty famous because famous people, and I'm talking about like big deal Oscar people, still deal with people asking them questions or not knowing what's going on with them and asking them really stupid stuff. Sometimes it is best to beat people to a scoop by talking about it yourself online. A great example is Nikki Tutorials from YouTube recently. So if you know anything about Nikki Tutorials, and I don't really follow most YouTubers, but I was very aware of Nikki Tutorials just because like I geek out over makeup and film makeup, and I had looked up Nikki's stuff. I wouldn't have known, and it didn't cross my mind like, is Nikki a trans woman? I'd never crossed my mind, but she is trans, and somebody was going to out her as trans, but guess what? Nikki stood up and said, I'm going to do this before you do. Because this is 2020, after all. People may be out and trans, but they're not safely out and trans quite often, especially if you don't have money or any of these things that Nikki Tutorials has an audience, but nevertheless, somebody was bullying Nikki, and I don't know her, but I was sad when I read that, and then she just came out and said, I'm trans. I'm a trans woman. Beat people to it, because she owns her own story. You should always own your own story. And that's where I was talking about some of these things, and here's my note on that. I finally get to, well, I skipped ahead of my notes, but yeah. Grant as many press interviews as possible, including with newer podcasts and blogs. List them on a press page on your website. They will also show up in search engine results, but it may take about 1 year. At least in my case, it's sometimes a year, even worse, a year and a half. I know a gentleman who tells me, and he's always complaining, his results sometimes take 6 months. I'm like, welcome to the club, like, sorry now that you joined us and you're getting press. And press can be big or small. It's cool. I've had both. Many negative terms thrown at you can be twisted with that's the note I skipped ahead to. You can be twisted with a PR spin into being positive. Use some of those not so nice words and own them. So we talked about that. Like, if somebody calls you something, own it. And everything that can be said your way can be owned. Like, people, many years ago, I had something taken down that was really mocking me. And it was actually mocking my pen name. They didn't know Nicole Russin-McFarland existed, so they knocked my pen name I used for a newspaper, and I had to quit using a pen name. There were several pieces like that, and this happened to be one. They're like, this one thing was like, what if all she does is go out to events? And then lo and behold, guess what is on my biography? Is this thing in Illinois that says, I just don't remember what it was. It was something like, it was a pen name I was using, and it ended up using for the New York Daily News, but it was something like, all she does is go out to things, and she has pictures doing it. It was something so weird, and I don't recall it. I had it removed. That's one thing. You can actually have things removed if you do it wisely and legitimately have a reason to do so. So, what did I say here? I think I said, oh, yes. When she was 15, this is from IMDb. This biography may change in the future, but it's my truth. Okay, so when she was 15, Russin started attending red carpet events like the VMAs, pressuring herself to never give up on her dreams because she was meeting and seeing people whose entertainment careers she envied. And it talks about how and I did mention this on another podcast called The Podcast, where it's like, blame Timberlake. I really wanted to see Timberlake. I was an admirer, not of him as a date, but of him, and I just loved his career, and I really wanted to see him. And after that, I was like, I'm not going to regular school. I want to graduate. My parents said, like, you can't quit school. You have to graduate early, so that's what I did. But anyway, that's how you own that. So there's so many things I can think about that I now own. Like people saying, oh, she's this and this. Well, now I own them. I'm so much more open about it, because if you aren't open about the things that people torment you on, or at least try to, and they think it's so funny sitting behind these desks writing mean things about teenagers, because I've been in that position, little, like 20-year-old girls, 21-year-old boys, they think it's funny. And, I'm 32 right now as I record this. People think it's hysterical. Like, and sometimes the worst thing is some of these pieces that are written on message boards or whatever they are, like, articles. There's an article when I was 21 that I had taken down, one of two, and it was written by someone who I think was a young woman of 24 at the time, or 23, and that hurt me so badly, knowing that it wasn't like a 50-year-old man, that it was this young woman who was like me and had probably as many of the same goals I did, or shared, or at least we had some value systems that we shared, and she was the one doing it. I hope, and I made it aware to her, and she wouldn't take it down, and it took a long time. But anyway, that's painful that one of your peers is doing this to somebody who's like, she could be her little sister, and having no regrets. And I hope that person who I'm talking about, that young lady at the time, now that she's an older woman, not old, like grown and all that, I hope that now she has grown as a human, because that is not nice. I mean, that there's certain things that are just like poking fun at people, and there's certain things that are just like, I can't believe you're doing this to one of your peers as a fellow young woman, because it's just ridiculous. So that may have happened to you. And you don't have to be famous for these things to happen to you. That's one thing I'd like to point out, that many people, and I have so many discussions with people about this stuff, about branding. Many people who talk to me very personally, and for whatever reason they trust me, um, they're not Victoria Beckham level famous or Jennifer Lawrence or any of that. Very often, these people are dealing with stuff. They've only had one role on television, or say they used to have a day job at a corporation or whatever. These are or none of that at all. Sometimes things that happen are way before you have the power of being one of the top A-list names in Hollywood to defend yourself, because then you can kind of defend yourself a little bit more, and at least you have the financials and like a nice condo or whatever. Most of the time, believe it or not, that I hope you're learning as I'm going to go through these things on the podcast with personal branding and press and all that. Most of the time, these things happen to you right now, like whoever you are. And there's going to be a blog hit on you, or at least a mean customer review or something. So let's talk about that throughout this podcast, in addition to other tips. Okay. My final major point: living without being yourself is stressful. Do not do it. Learn from me. You think having a fake image of yourself but same thing when I'm reading in my notes, might help you getting a day job. It will not. Learn from my experiences. People won't hire you anyway. And I'm going to do a big episode hopefully on that soon. But there's so much discrimination against anyone pursuing entertainment goals, whether they live in London or they live in LA, they live in Oklahoma, okay, Illinois, wherever. There is discrimination, and I'm trying to do my best to think of ways to overcome that. Not just myself, but enabling people, my peers, if you're listening to this podcast, my peers in the film industry at every level, to beat that, because until you are often in the position of being nominated for an Emmy or starring on the second or third season of a hit show as a lead, you don't have money. Okay. And it doesn't matter if your parents have money or if you have money somehow or grew up with it, or you're from a project. Okay. Everyone you see on TV, those people are freaking out about money. You probably are, because so much of your money is invested in your career. And that's a great topic for another day. But I'm just going to tell you, people are not going to hire you at this moment in time. I'm personally working to change that. I can tell you something that two things I did at the moment of this interview, and I don't mind saying them. Okay. And it's okay. Number one, today I wrote an email to the Directors Guild of America. Although I'm not a member, I talked about I would really like to set up something that provides new DGA members, as well as people who are ineligible for the DGA but want to be studio directors and make blockbusters and sort of things like that. And hopefully we can extend this to other groups, but I want to have something. I mean, I don't know what they're going to say. I hope they go for it, but I want to collaborate with them and have some kind of resources for people to seek legal help when they're experiencing discrimination, and also to open up the discussion on this. So I don't know how well that's going to go down. I have talked to some DGA members about it, but I wrote to inquiring about, is there anything the board can do? That's not quite the same as DGA members. Big difference, because they're the DGA members are like Christopher Nolan, and he's my ideal if I can, because since I'm being honest, I think he's the person on the board I most relate to. And, if his brother used to write for Esquire, and I do journalism, and, not regularly that he did, but he had a piece in Esquire that became Memento, and there's a long story. The other thing And I don't know if they're going to throw away my interview. But there's a woman I was interviewed by for the Wall Street Journal for a piece about millennials and their relationships to money, and I was to represent the arguments, not arguing arguments from people in the film industry, and how, and all the questions were like, so what do people invest in? What do people do this in? Are you aware there are apps that you can invest small amounts, including $5? And my answer was like, nobody, whatever I told you guys listening, nobody has money to invest because we're spending it all on our career expenses, including, and we all want to be financially independent, but it's very difficult to be financially independent when people are having their hours cut from the most basic jobs. Some people are being fired. Some people are having full-time jobs taken away from them. Some people are like me, where we have so much education and background and skill prepared for the workplace, for jobs that are not the mall or the supermarket or whatever. And we have ideas stolen from us. Okay. We have so much going on. And, like me, I'm a freelancer. And just the other day, somebody stole my idea after 10 days of working on it. And it was so obvious. It was like a slap in the face that this major magazine did this to me. And it's not the first time. And I blew a fuse. And I was like, okay, I'm going to contact the DGA. I happened by coincidence, the very morning I was doing the Wall Street Journal interview, that's when the email flew in that somebody else was doing the very article I was going to write. And it was so tailored to me and my personal brand and my circumstances. And I blew a fuse and said, I'm going to talk about discrimination. And I'm going to talk about discrimination until nobody has discriminating views anymore, and people are sick of it. They're so sick of it, and they stop discriminating against actors, singers, writers, composers, screenwriters, songwriters, whatever, directors. And it's every single person coming to me saying the things that happen to me, like everyone's so excited to work with a new team member until they find out, oh wait, this is like a fictional name, but say like Joe, he's an actor. He was in the newspaper for being an actor, or a magazine, headquarters, let's fire him. And he's just working as a sales boy at the mall. Let's say this person, Karen, she's an actress. No, let's cut her hours. Or this guy, I know it's a real man. Let's cut his hours. Let's make him part-time. Let's do this. And it's in my case, it's like, let's steal her ideas. She's amazing, but oh wait, did it say she's pursuing animation? She's a composer. I have had phone interviews with it. That's why I said, like, I've had enough. I don't know what I'm going to do. But I've had interviews in the past year where I talk on the phone with people, and then the editor interviewing me is like, it's happened more than once. You're a film score composer? With a question mark. Like, what did I do? Is that a crime? People are not doing anything inappropriate as film score composers. Or they ask me about cartoons. It's like, didn't know cartoons were inappropriate. I mean, isn't their whole family-friendly empire based on them? And then that's what I deal with, and people don't want to work with me. It's happened long before. From the time I always had issues getting employment due to the large amounts of harassment within the media industry, naturally. But the moment I started talking about filmmaking and all this stuff, it's like it fell. And I went from a really tough job to land to a non-existent job to land, or a once-a-year job, and now it's like 0%. So that's one reason I think the only change is going to happen, because I'm open about it. I don't want to pursue employment where I'm not welcome. I do love certain employment opportunities that come in that direction. I do love journalism, but it's a little hard for me to pursue work as a journalist if people are routinely stealing my ideas and openly admitting to them. It happened with me years ago with a website, with a men's publication that's non-existent. And there was a guy who liked me, and there was this young woman who, not young, Carmen Electra. Okay, she's a babe. And I went to interview her, and the publicist asked me, like, could you talk to these people and interview Carmen Electra for this website? Since you're already writing there. And I did, and they were like, no. Months later, they interviewed Carmen Electra. Months later, they interviewed the guy who had been, like, you know, into me enough that I could have interviewed him about his, like anything. I could have talked the guy into dyeing his hair pink and shaving off his mustache or whatever. He didn't have a mustache, but he had like scruff. You know what I mean? Like, I could have done that just for the sake of an interview. I had that power. And they said no. And then he was interviewed. I'm so used to that, but the last one hurt me so much because it was like a thing I'm deeply passionate about, film score music, and it was so pinned to me that it just hurt. And all I can say is best of luck to you, and please put a feminist spin on this because it hurt, you know? But having a fake image does not guarantee people will like you. In my life, it's never worked, whether I try to be corporate, serious, sexy, whatever, it doesn't work. And being a fake, this is my most important point to drive home of this last section. Being a fake will get in the way of your Hollywood career goals. You will be afraid to say things or release that song or movie, or be afraid to do anything. You'll just constantly live in fear. Just for people who aren't hiring you anyway. I mean, what's the point of that? Okay, if you were making lots of money, but no, this is a world of discrimination. And that's just our lives. If you sign up for this long before you get an Oscar or an Emmy, a Grammy, all that stuff, you're going to be dealing with this. So just know that this is going to be your life. And I think all we can do is speak out about it. And I'm trying my best. But in the meantime, if what you can do in regards to that, just tell people this is what I've done, and it doesn't always work, but I just tell people I don't know what you think a professional journalist is supposed to look like or sound like, but I'm the best person for this job because I'm so passionate about this topic, and I have great resources for this. And if you don't want to hire me, I'm sorry, I won't pitch you again. But if it wouldn't be the first time that somebody has discriminated against me because of me pursuing the goals that are in my heart of film and music. And that's all you can do, because otherwise they go and they Google you and then they're on the phone with you, or they're in an office typing away and they're like, you're a film composer? As if that's a sin. But that's my reality. And I want so much to talk about this in an open conversation about branding and everything, because it's so, you're not going to convince those kinds of people, but you can convince the majority of people. And the majority of people can go from looking at you as like a flea to just like, hey, I was wrong about this person. And the web is the most powerful way to do that. I wish you so much luck in branding yourself with the internet, because it's your greatest weapon. Embrace the internet.